We are very honored to have Leonard DeWitt here on Cup of Coffee this morning, and also his lovely wife, Joanne, and glad to have you two in the studios with us today. And first of all, Leonard, welcome to KLYC.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here. And Joanne, are we going to get you to talk on the radio this morning?
Excuse me, I'm not very good at talking on the radio, but I'll let him do all the talking.
Okay.
He's the one that's interesting.
So let's talk to Leonard. Leonard, I may have to have you get a little bit closer to the microphone there. If you could do that, that'd be great. So how are you feeling these days?
I feel great. Went to a doctor yesterday and got a pretty good checkup, and he said I'm not bad off for being as ancient as I am.
Well, we're sure glad to have you here on the Cup of Coffee this morning. So how is the process going for the changing your Distinguished Service Cross to a Medal of Honor? Where are we in that process?
It'd be hard for me to say so much of it's due to a government process. This has to go, so far, Governor Kitzhaber signed a bill and to send this to the President and to Congress and the Pentagon to take another look at it. And so far as we can tell from talking to Alicia Hamill, Colonel Alicia Hamill of the Oregon National Guard Historical Society, is that the people who rule on this in the Pentagon are asking for another eyewitness. Now, we had several eyewitnesses, and we've got data here at the time, and why they need a new one, it's hard for me to say, but anyway, she said that they seem to be pretty willing to help out with it, except that they need a little new data now. 70 years ago, that's pretty hard to come up with people who are hanging around about that time. I'm lucky to be here myself.
So how does that make you feel? You know, it's taken 70 years for them. Anybody who reads the story says, yeah, you know, you held off single-handedly, like the song says, against all odds, held off the onslaught of the Japanese advance. You even threw your helmet at the Japanese soldiers. You just basically gave it all you got. And I would think that would deserve a Medal of Honor. Does that make you frustrated that it's taken 70 years for the Army to even just follow through on the original recommendation from the commander?
The original recommendation came out, my division commander, a general who ran the 41st Division, recommended it. Then the Corps commander above him recommended it. And then it got stopped up at MacArthur's headquarters. Now, as far as getting frustrated from taking so long, for years I never even thought about it. I thought the Distinguished Service Cross was a pretty darn good decoration, and so I didn't worry anymore about not getting the Medal of Honor. But not too long back, Alicia Hamill, the Colonel Alicia Hamill, found out that since the Spanish-American War or something like that, Oregon units had never received a Medal of Honor. So this has kind of got people to think about that, and we would like to see Oregon get a Medal of Honor for World War II at least. And I feel the same way. In fact, I've said that if this thing comes through, I fully intend to take that medal once it's awarded to me and pass it on to the Oregon 41st Division Oregon Museum as a let them be the custodian and put it on display so that the other people who are still in the 41st Brigade now can see it. Give them a little incentive maybe. You know, the Oregon 41st Brigade's due to go back to Afghanistan in 2014 and try to close that thing out. And they certainly need a little incentive to be proud of their unit. And from just Oregon's standpoint alone, we'd like to see that thing happen. And not that I need any more recognition. I've gotten quite a lot of that. But I would like to see it happen for Oregon and for the 41st Division at the time, and now the 41st Brigade.
Do you consider yourself a hero?
Me? Personally, no, but I know I had to do. You see, in order to understand what I did on the night of in question, you have to know the circumstances. We were in a position against a greatly superior Japanese force, and we had been, our regiment, the 162, had been trying, along with us, to attack this outfit. We wanted to get their naval base, which was at the base of the Salomon Peninsula. And they had this place, this defense position on the peninsula itself, overlooking the naval base, built up over months into a really big, heavily fortified area. And there were about, we estimated somewhere between 2,000 and 5,000, depending on how many units they had and what we could see of them, which they didn't let us see them very much if we could help it. And there was a regiment of us that were down to about probably 1,000 people. And we were trying to get into this peninsula and get these people off, the Japanese Imperial forces, so that we could take that naval base. It was all part of the war effort. Mm-hmm. And so we had started up the sides of this particular area. They had very steep sides on the seaside side. There's a little village called Boise down there. And we started up from there and out toward the sea, toward the end of the peninsula. And we were repulsed because we were trying to fight uphill against heavily fortified positions. And so eventually we left that task to some other people, and we tried to move around to the left flank. And we managed to find this little ridge line running from the Japanese Imperial Forces position, which about to a mountain back there, which they like to communicate with. And we managed to get a little spur on that ridge. There were about 63 of us left in the company. We started out with something like 160. But we'd been fighting for 200 miles, driving the Japanese up the Papuan Peninsula in New Guinea. And we had driven them back to their, what we call final protective line, to stop us from getting the naval base. And they didn't want to give it up. And the Japanese forces were accomplished. They'd beaten everything else in the Pacific, including MacArthur's units in the Philippines. And they had never imagined a National Guard outfit called active duty could defeat them, which Tokyo Rose told us that lots of times. So we got this little spur, 63 of us, and we just got an artillery observer up there with us. And we had our 105 cannon back in the rear down to this little village of Boise. And Turner was just raising Cain with this Japanese position because he managed to find what was left of a tree, and he was spotting artillery shots all over that peninsula. And I was always afraid he was going to get himself killed up there, but some sniper, but he managed to survive. And we were there literally protecting his observation post. The Japanese thought we were just a pain in the neck when we first showed up. Because, a little tiny outfit like us and buttressing up against a big dug-in task force like that. And they tried at first just to come down, and I think they thought they were going to run over us, but they got stopped. We managed to repulse them. We created heavy casualties. And then after a while, it seemed that they began to realize where all the trouble was coming from, all this artillery fire that was landing on them, and destroying their camouflage, destroying their positions, and making it very difficult for them to defend that place, because every time they stuck their head up, they got an artillery barrage. And so they finally realized where their trouble was coming from, so I think they sent down a heavy task force that night to get us off of there. And it started out with I heard a big commotion going on up in the left forward side of our peninsula, or our little position there. We were in a perimeter, and you had to watch in all directions because they could come from any direction too.
Even from behind?
Pardon?
Even from behind?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Of course, that was one of the tactics, to go around behind you. That's why we always went into perimeter positions in the jungles, because in the jungles you can't see what the other guy's doing very well. He's down there hiding through the trees, and he'll hit you one place and then he'll come in and hit you hard in another, or maybe hit you in two places and hit you hard in another. I mean, those are the tactics in jungle fighting.
Yeah.
And so all the rest of my perimeter, they didn't dare leave their positions. We had it so thinly held in the first place that they had to stay where they were, so I couldn't get help. I went up there to see what all the commotion was, and sure enough, here was a big loudmouth Japanese just shouting and giving orders not far down the pretty steep slope from me. And the 4 people who were supposed to be holding that had left. They claimed they were taking a medic, one of them to the medic, but they just chickened out. And they, on the way by, in the dark, I couldn't stop them, but they told me they were going to withdraw and then counterattack. That was a little joke. But anyway, I went over there to see what they'd left, and it was pretty bad. I could hear on top of this little position we held, all the foliage had been blown off. They've been shooting artillery at us too, and except for this big stump of a tree that our artillery observer was up in. So, but coming up the slopes, there was a lot of brush, and I could hear these Japanese hanging on to the brush as they worked their way up. And they had this big loud-mouthed character. He had a very good, deep bass voice, and he could shout like you wouldn't believe. And he was urging his people on. I couldn't understand Japanese, but you could tell what the guy was doing. And so I ran across a Browning automatic rifle. That's kind of a shoulder-fired submachine gun in a way. And that these people had left, which they weren't going to counterattack with. And so I picked that up, and it's a pretty heavy, deadly weapon. It fires 20 rounds. And so I started shooting down in the brush where these people were coming up. And I could tell I was making a big commotion, because you could hear guys yelling and hollering and falling back down. And so I didn't have another clip of that gun, so I had a Thompson submachine gun that I packed with me. Had a couple of clips for that. So I used all that ammunition up, and I could hear further disconcertion down in the Japanese. This guy kept shouting at him, "Come on, get back up there." I could tell that. And so I managed to find, I had 2 Aussie Mills bombs, a big heavy grenade with me that the Australians furnished us. And I found 3 more that these people had abandoned. So I started using them on these people down in the gully. And it had effect. Next thing you know, I didn't hear loudmouth anymore. And I'd considered yelling something back at him, derogatory about his emperor or something. But I realized that if I yelled, I'd sound like a little schoolgirl compared to that guy's voice. Yeah. So I didn't do it. And anyway, I didn't hear him anymore. I figured I got the cotton picker. I sure played heck with the people he was sending up there. And then all of a sudden the Japs threw another grenade at me, and it started right toward me. See, their grenades sparkle in the night when they come. And so I hit the ground and rolled to get right away. The grenade was pretty close where it landed, and if you hit the ground, maybe the stuff will go up in the air from it, and then roll away as far as you can get before it goes off. That's what I did, and much to my amazement, I fell down a little gully that didn't have any, it just had grass in it, and I kind of slid a little bit, landed on top of two Japanese that I hadn't been shooting at or anything else. And so I had a grenade in my belt, a bayonet. So I stuck that in one of them. He went yelling and hollering back down the ridge. The other guy was looking at me kind of astounded, because I was almost on top of him. And so I didn't have anything left to fight with. I didn't want to try to hit him with my fist. So I pulled off my helmet and I socked him in the mouth with it. And he went screeching down the hill. I don't know whether it hurt him that bad or what, or he was thinking about his dentist bill, but he went down the hill, and then I crawled back up. I had a hard time because with a little bit of grass in that thing and no brush, it's kind of slippery, and I managed to get up on top, and I was so disgusted that I had nothing else to fight with, I'd used up all the ammunition I had. I used up all the grenades. So just out of frustration, I jerked off my hull and slung it down this ravine. And, excuse me. And I heard it go skittering all the way down to the bottom. Nothing else was coming up. So I started walking back and forth on top of the ridge, and it was all quiet. And I then realized all of a sudden, hey, I did it. I drove these guys off. And so I contacted the people on either side of this abandoned positions, and I told them, I said, there's nobody in these places right there. I think I've driven them off. You guys keep an eye out over there in case anybody tries to come up again, but I don't think they're going to. I went over to the people on the left side and warned them. Then I went down and I got hold of the lieutenant who was supposed to be in charge of that area and told him that what had happened, that his people is hiding back in the perimeter somewhere. And he looked at me like I was a madman. He was standing there with no helmets, and yelling at him in the night. And so he got people up there somewhere, and that was the end of it. And so I figured, well, I did pretty good,
You did very good.
Yeah.
You probably saved a whole lot of American lives. So, thank you for doing that. That's so in a situation like that, I think a lot of people, and by the way, we're not going to break for ABC News. We're going to roll right over the top of it, kind of like Leonard did over the Japanese. But so we're not going to break for the top. We'll continue on with a cup of coffee. So when you're in that situation, Leonard, a lot of people wonder, they always wonder when they hear stories like that if they would be able to do the same thing you did, because it's amazing. Alicia Hamill was sharing the story at the event of the Granbury District recently. Was when you go into the Army and you're looking next to the guy, you might be a big burly guy, and then the other guy might be a small frame guy with horn rimmed glasses. He might be the hero. You just really never know what you're going to do when the shells start going off and the rounds start coming in, whether you're going to run or whether you're going to fight. What would you have to say about that? It's what would you say to people that are listening to your story and hoping that they would be like you and they would pick up the BAR and the Tommy gun and do what they had to do?
Well, that's what training's for. You see, back in all kinds of training, you get overhead rifle fire, so you learn the sounds of bullets going by, and you get in bunkers and they fire explosives, and excuse me. So training helps, and frankly, I think a lot of other people, not the guys like the guys that departed the position, but I'd say at least 70% of soldiers who wound up in that position would try to do all they could to stop it, because You know, if those Japs had gotten in, we'd have been done for. They would have wiped. They would have wiped us out, because here you got a little thin bunch of people around the perimeter of a position, and if you get a force that comes in and gets in the middle, then your own people are trying to fight. If they want to stay and fight, they're shooting at each other, literally, shooting back into the middle of the perimeter. And on top of that, usually, if that happens, if you get into the middle of a perimeter, you wipe the other outfit out. That's just, you're a big force in the middle, and they're scattered all little outside. You're getting pretty heavy odds against each guy in a position. And so about our plan, if we ever had a force get in the middle, was usually that we just have to go over the sides and hope some of us survive. And it's pretty deadly if you let them do it. So I wasn't about to let them in if I could help it. But I think most other people would try to do the same thing. Yeah, I don't feel all that heroic about that. I just had to run into a situation where I had to do it, and it worked. It might not have worked. The odds against me doing that were pretty heavy. If they could have ever gotten a silhouette of me, they'd probably killed me. And I knew that. I was walking back and forth like an idiot. You know, they were down in the bottom looking up, and even in the dark you can pick up silhouettes. So it just had to be brutal and hard enough to make them pull out.
What's going through your mind when you're doing this? When you got the Browning automatic rifle and that's a pretty heavy gun, and recoil, and that runs out of clips, runs out of rounds, and you pull your Tommy gun and you start emptying that downhill. What's going through your mind? Are you just focused on that?
I was trying to impose the most damage I could.
So
I knew that there was a mass of people coming up this thing, and I was hoping to stop all of them that I could. I was trying to spread my fire so I could cover the entire area, and it's just a methodical thing. You know, I had to. If I just fired in one place, Japanese weren't cowards by any means. They would fight to the death, and they lost some people coming up, but there was still a force of them. Yeah, they would have kept coming. That's like these two guys that I hadn't fired at were still trying to get up there. But I didn't want to give them a chance. I deliberately walked back and forth so I could cover the entire area. I just didn't know this little ravine was off to the left where these two characters that I missed were coming up.
Are you scared when that's going on, or are you focused on, I've got to stop these guys, and are you just totally focused on the mission at hand, which is I'm going to put as many rounds as I can down this hill and keep these guys coming? Are you so totally focused on what's going on that you're not thinking, gee whiz, I'm a sitting duck here?
I think you hit it on the nail. I personally, once the shooting starts, always seem to be able to focus on what I was doing.
Let's stop for a minute here. It looks like ABC News took over. We'll be back here in just a minute on a cup of coffee.
Okay.
A very interesting story that we're having this morning with Leonard DeWitt. Received the Distinguished Service Cross, and you've heard the meritorious action that he did during World War II in Papua New Guinea. And Leonard, thank you for being with us and sharing the story with us once again. I know you've shared this story countless times in the last 70 years. Is it hard to talk about? I know some guys, some veterans I talk to have a hard time talking about their experience.
Not for me. It didn't bother me. I get a little bit tired of talking about it, yeah, because, but I don't mind explaining what happened. I think I owe it to the public and the other guys in the 162 to talk about it. Now, that's quite an outfit, you know. You ought to read the book, The Devil's Sandbox.
Yeah.
Those guys presently in 162 who fought in Afghanistan and Kuwait, places like that, they were adventurers too, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you. I know, 70 years you've told the story a lot of times, and like you said, you're probably getting a little tired of it. However, thank you for sharing the story and continuing to share the story, because it gives encouragement to the people, to the men and women currently serving in the National Guard, in the military forces, first responders. But I also think it gives encouragement to people who are just Joe citizen out on the street, that we played the song Against All Odds before, and we did that by design before you came in and were on the show. Because so many times all of us are faced with overwhelming odds. So many times in people's lives, it's kind of like you were faced with on that ridge, where it just looks like that you just can't stop it, that you cannot make a difference, that one man can't make a difference. But you're a living example that you can fight against that, and that you can come out victorious. So I just want to thank you for your story. Tremendous story of encouragement and not giving up. And the thing that I love about your story, I've shared it on the air before, was that you were looking around for anything you could use to complete the mission. Where's a grenade? Where's another gun? Where's another bullet? And you didn't have anything, and so you used the last thing you had, which was your helmet. I mean, you used everything you had to win. And the thing that I love about your story is the very last thing you used is probably what maybe have saved the day, because they thought it was a satchel charge, and they thought, we better get out of here. The whole ridge is going to go.
Might have been. I always thought there was a possibility they thought that, but anything to help,
And then it's also a good encouragement for the guys currently serving in the National Guard today, because one of the challenges today is these guys and gals are serving multiple deployments. They're going back 6, 7, 8 times. Back in the day in World War II and Korea, Vietnam, if you survived at least this is how I understand it, if you survived your tour, you got a ticket home. So if you could make it through, at least probably in your theater operation, like Normandy Beach, when the guys were going inland to Germany, they were engaged. They couldn't get a ticket home and go back. They had to finish the job, and that's kind of how you were in Papua New Guinea, wasn't it?
Yeah, and of course I went on to, that was one campaign. Mm-hmm. We did, shortly after that, take that peninsula and drive the Japanese out. What few of them were left probably got away in a supply submarine, because we couldn't find any when we took the naval base. But I went back to Australia and got commissioned, then I went on to the 32nd Division, and I put in 3 more campaigns in New Guinea. And then, of course, I went in, later on I went to Korea, put in 2 campaigns there, and then spent the rest of 26 years in the military. So I had a lot of military experience, but I'll tell you what, I think the reason I don't mind relating this story occasionally is that I'd like to give the 162nd Infantry Regiment was Oregon's regiment for the 41st Infantry. Washington, Idaho, and Montana furnished regiments too. And so I hope it gives the people who are in it now and at the time and in between a little pride in the outfit. The outfit did this. I wasn't there all by myself. There were other guys around that perimeter, and we had been fighting to get there, and we fought a little while afterward too. So the regiment really did it, in a way. They just happened to put me there. And the regiment is what deserves the accolades as far as I'm concerned. That's why I want to put this thing, if they ever award that, I'm going to go let the regimental historians take care of it and put it on display.
That's just another thing that speaks of your character, is that when hopefully you do get the Medal of Honor, it's not something you just want to put on your dresser drawer and hang around your neck. You want to give it to the museum and let the whole company, let the whole Oregon National Guard enjoy that and look at that and say, we got this.
Yeah, that's ours.
That's ours. It's not just one man. It's the companies. It's the region's medal to honor those who did heroic things as well.
Yep, that's the way I look at it.
Well, so Leonard, you're keeping pretty busy these days, aren't you?
You might say that. I've made several speeches, made several appearances, and I don't mind. Again, that's what I think part of what we owe Oregon is to make these appearances, make the talks, put out the word that there's a great outfit in Oregon, and it's continuing that way too.
Still is. Joanne, you can go ahead and open that door a little bit. I turned off the noisemaker out in the office, so it's getting a little warm in here. We don't want to get a little too warm. So back to the Papua New Guinea campaign. How significant was this in stopping the overall advance of the Japanese? It was you held your ground, you staved off that attack, then you were probably able to take over that air base?
Yes, we took the naval base away from them, lock, stock, and barrel, gave us a nice facility. They had docks built there, warehouses, everything else that you could expect. They had an airstrip. You probably heard the story about our artillery observer. He fired a round at an airplane that had been a photo reconnaissance plane that had come over to take pictures of our rear area and probably bring bombers in. And our Bofors guns, or anti-aircraft guns, had hit him, crippled him, so he came around to land at this airstrip, and our artillery observer fired a sensing round to, adjust fire, and the sensing round hit the plane as it was landing and blew it up. It was unheard of, and so that was another incident in the incident there of that campaign that we thought was pretty amazing. To get that, how much effect did that have on the war? It had a lot of effect. Nimitz was over in the Guadalcanal area fighting his best, trying to stop the Japanese forces. We took a major naval facility away from the Japanese. That certainly helped the war effort. And we knew that, that's why we wanted that place. And their other naval base was right up the coast at Leh, and that put that in jeopardy, and it wasn't long before that was gone too. So we literally cleaned the Japanese and the Japanese Navy out of Papua New Guinea. And that was the end of the fighting in New Guinea, really. In New Guinea. The islands off New Guinea had pretty heavy battles, like Biak Island. But we cleaned the Japanese out of New Guinea, and that was the final battles that did it.
Have you ever been back there?
No, I haven't. I wish I could go back. But
You'd like to go back there?
Oh, yeah. I'd like to see what... But you know what? We used to cut a trail through the jungle to get around behind the Japanese to see what they were doing. And by the time we'd come back, it was grown all over again. We weren't too worried about leaving much of a trail behind us because the jungle goes so fast that in a week you don't know anybody was there. So if I went back there, I'd probably need a darn good machete and maybe a brush cutter. But I'd like to go back and take a look at it. Yeah, I'd like to.
For those of us who would never fought in the Pacific in World War II, what was it like? It was hot, muggy. Tell us a little bit about the conditions you had to deal with.
About like Oregon was the last few days. Yes, it was very humid. We started out with raincoats, and we found out by wearing them we sweated more than it rained, so we just go around and let it rain on us. And it would rain invariably in the daytime, on and off. It was very hot. It didn't hurt you to get wet from the rain. Kind of kept the mosquitoes off to boot. But then at night, usually it stopped, and it would cool down to where you'd be uncomfortable. So they finally issued us a poncho, they called it. And it had a hood on it, and then it just pulled over you in what a poncho is. And we liked the poncho. You could sleep in that. You could spread it out, squat down in it, and hide sort of, and all kinds of things, and you could keep a little rain off if you felt so inclined, but normally the rain didn't bother me. It was just there constantly. Heat was very humid, very hot. It was, say, about 100 degrees, maybe, something like that, when the sun was out. And all kinds of critters flying around through the air. So humid jungles are just humid jungles. You don't really understand how humid and dank and dark and hot they can get until you've been there.
Yeah. Now, as far as the critters, big mosquitoes, I would assume.
Oh, the Anopheles mosquito, which gave us malaria, was mostly they came out at night, but you still got some in the daytime. And we had malaria all the time while we were there.
Did you ever have malaria?
Oh, yeah. It affected us constantly. We took Atibrine, which was a depressant. It didn't stop the malaria, but it would kind of hold it back a little bit. But about every 10 days, you'd start hitting chills and fever. And so you'd lay down on the ground and cover up with a poncho, let the hot sun hit you, try to shake off the chills, and then the fever would attack you. But you'd have to go through that about half a dozen times before finally it would hit you so hard you'd have to go to the hospital. You'd go unconscious, and your fever would get up to around 104 or so. And then we go to the hospital. For 11 days, we get heavy doses of Atibrine, which is this German dye that they discovered would work against the malaria. And then we'd come back to our unit. We weren't cured of malaria. We were just depressed again. And then we go through the same routine again. About another month, and wham, off to the hospital again. Some people picked up amoebic dysentery because the water we drank was swamp water. Once you got up forward, where it's harder to get water trailers up there, through the jungle. And so we had a little pill that would put in the water, I can't recall the name of it, that would take care of the substance in the water that made you sick.
Right.
In about an hour. But some people couldn't resist. They get some, I'll put a couple in and I can take it quicker. They wind up with amoebic dysentery. That's bad. Sometimes it is deadly. Sometimes it just sends you home with terrible stomach problems. And I heard maybe one guy that came back after having amoebic dysentery. But we had all kinds of problems living in that jungle. Believe it or not, I liked New Guinea. I didn't mind putting up with all that.
What do you like about New Guinea?
It's a very, first of all, it's a big, gloomy, adventurous-looking country. I read the book Gold Dust and Ashes, and before I went in, and told all about the old-time Australians who were in there dredging for gold. It's lots of gold mines in New Guinea, and they were dredging the rivers at first, and then they got 3-engined airplanes, the old Ford Trimotors and the Fokker Trimotors, and they started being able to haul equipment up to Wow, which is on top of the mountains in the rear of New Guinea. It divides both coasts. It's hilarious. And way up there where the cannibals used to live, they aren't cannibals anymore, but see, the coastal natives were kind of a bunch of bums, but the mountainous natives were good. That's where we got our ammunition bearers from and things like that. Bong trains, we called them. But I read the stories of the adventures of these guys who were in the gold mining business. And see, they tried to use mules at first, but the mules got malaria too. So they had to get people. And there's some amusing stories about that. And I learned Pidgin English from this book, so I could speak with the natives and do a pretty good job of it. And so, good example of pidgin English is their term for a piano. They say, Bacchus with teeth, you strike him, he cry out. That's pretty descriptive. A Belushi was a cross of any kind. A plane was a cross. A bird was a cross. A cross on the front of a little church that the old missionaries built was a cross, a Belushi. So Belushi walk along belonging to Japan, walk along a soda water. You know what that means? That means Japanese airplanes coming down the coast of the ocean. And so I really loved being able to talk with the natives, and they could understand me. So I thought New Guinea was a pretty adventurous country. I was kind of a dumb kid that liked adventure and always wanted to get in the military. And when I did, I started getting adventures that just suited me fine. And New Guinea, for me, was another big adventure in a way. And of course, I had to do a little fighting on the side, but I just loved being there and seeing all of the things of this great country. I thought it was a great island there, and had all kinds of things that kids could go in and enjoy if they wanted to.
All the experiences you had in New Guinea, good, bad, and the ugly, would you do it again? Would you sign up, go into the military, and go back there and do it all over again?
Oh, sure I would. Of course. I'd go a lot of other places I've been too. Frankly, I must be a kind of an optimistic character because I've never really been anywhere that I can say that I didn't like. Korea was a tough country.
Did you serve in Korea?
Me?
Yes.
I was with the 7th Cav in Korea.
In Korea.
Custer's old outfit, yeah.
Okay.
I went through 2 campaigns there. I finally got shot up over there, but I didn't ever get hit in World War II. I was very fortunate, to avoid the bullet, you might say. But I got caught in a situation in Korea that I just got blown up, you might say, whether I liked it or not.
Ouch. So that put you out of action?
Yeah, for about 3 months.
And then you went back to the front?
No.
Or you went home?
I went home. We were supposed to only be over there a year, and that put me over quite a bit over a year. So I wasn't crazy about fighting in Korea. I think that's one of the worst wars we ever had. One of. There are a lot of things about the Korean operation that you're either in swamp water or rice paddies or steep mountains. That's tough. We had heavy opposition. First, the North Koreans were bad enough, but then the Chinese intervention came in, and they were coming in droves, and you couldn't shoot them enough to stop them. They'd run over you anyway. And but a lot of the Chinese who came down would just give up and said, hey, our ancestors live in USA, and we got nothing against USA. So
it was harder to fight in Korea than in Papua New Guinea in World War II?
That's hard to say. Fighting's fighting.
Yeah,
they all have their own circumstances.
It's hard any way you slice it.
Yeah. See, in Korea, we were more or less fighting big units against big units. In New Guinea, in the jungle, a lot of times just you and that other guy. And you do meet person to person on occasion. And at short range, in the jungle, you don't see a guy 100 yards away. You see him, if you finally spot him, he's 10 yards away. And like when I was combating these characters on that ridge that night, they were probably not more than 30 feet away from me at the most, down at the bottom of this hill. So it's just a difference. And the guys in Europe, they were getting bombarded with extremely heavy artillery that made great numbers of casualties among them. And at least fighting the Japanese, they didn't have very good artillery. They had usually one mountain gun that they could use pretty good effect. But they'd have to dig a hole for it and shoot it a little bit and then drag it back in the hole right quick because our counter battery fire would put them out of action if they didn't. And we normally had superior artillery weapons and in numbers. But another place like Korea, no, they had lots of artillery, and that was bad. Sometimes they'd outgun us.
We heard a lot about the Japanese tunneling in the Pacific Islands, digging underground. I know that was a problem in Vietnam, where they had you heard the U.S. military, there were some people serving the U.S. military called tunnel rats, where they'd have to go and clean out the Viet Cong from under the tunnels. Was that the secretive Japanese going under tunnels and hiding? And
they do that.
That was a problem.
Yeah, they
too, right?
The first thing they did to us, they had snipers that they put in trees. They were deadly. But they'd also dig what they call a spider hole. They'd dig a little hole in the ground where they could get down into, and they'd make a lid for it that looked like they were surrounding
Camouflage.
Yeah, camouflage. Yeah. And then when we walked by, they'd have sticks so it was solid. We'd walk by, they'd push it off and shoot some guy in the back, and then you turn around, where the heck that come from? You don't know, And so that was bad, the spider hole. That was a little bit of tunneling. Now, on Okinawa, you've heard the stories about that. They tunneled like the devil. And so they're good at tunneling, yeah, no doubt about that.
So that was a big challenge for you.
Yeah, we just didn't hit a lot of it because if they tunnel in New Guinea, they probably find themselves taking a bath because the water in the land was so prevalent.
What do you tell the guys and gals that are serving in the National Guard today? They come up to you and they say, "Leonard, thank you for your service," and they're honored to meet you. And what do you tell them to encourage them? And just you see them in their military fatigues, that they're serving currently. What words do you have for them?
I just say I'm really proud of you guys. I hope you don't have bad luck. I hope your wars are profitable and that you win. But you know as well as I do that war is not fun, you might say. Roosevelt used to say war is hell. And, or was it Churchill? One or the other. They were buddies anyway. But no, I have great admiration for the National Guard. And I let them know it every time I get a chance. And they, I think I'm a pretty good guy too. I've been to some of their meetings.
Yeah.
And I'm scheduled to make a talk to some of the artillery people here before too long.
Well, I know you're keeping pretty busy. I talked to Joanne, and we were talking to Alicia and trying to get you here on a cup of coffee. I know your schedule's pretty busy, and so we do appreciate you getting up at 7:30 in the morning, and obviously have to give a little before that to get in here in time. But thank you for coming in and being on the show.
Well, actually, it's my pleasure.
And loved hearing your story. By the way, if you want to hear the story again, it's going to be up on, we'll have it on a looped feed on our news network website. It's OregonPulse.com. And we'll probably put up a feed on our main website, KLYC.us. So if you want to hear the story again, and you'll be able to download it. And we've had a lot of requests for your story, Leonard. We've just restarted a cup of coffee here in the last couple of weeks. As obviously we're still working on some technical stuff here. And but yours so far has been the most popular show we've had. Our phone was ringing off the hook yesterday. People wanting to know when Leonard was going to be on the radio.
Well, I hope a dissertation wasn't a disappointment.
And we appreciate your story. Keep telling it. It's a huge encouragement for people that are, fighting challenges. It's an encouragement for people currently serving overseas that one guy can make a difference.
I hope. I really feel bad about the Oregon National Guard having to be deployed again to Afghanistan once more. I think they're, frankly, the people to do it. Citizen soldiers usually understand situations like that pretty well, but I hope it works out well for them, and I'm certainly going to be watching what they do and and cheering for him, you might say.
Okay. Joanne, what's it like to live with this guy?
He's a great guy, and he's been a wonderful husband, and I'm proud of him.
Did you get married before he went off?
No.
Or you got married after?
Yes, I didn't know him in those days. I probably couldn't have survived all of his adventures.
Sounds like you guys that love Leonard, you're a guy that loves adventure.
Yeah, I did.
You still do, probably.
Yeah, I like adventure.
Okay. Hey, that's going to wrap. Is there anything you want to add that we haven't talked about? I'd like to sit here and talk for another couple hours, but we both probably got things we got to do.
Well, what I'd like to add is that, again, I have great pride in this Oregon National Guard, and I'd like to encourage those people that I know they're going to be bigger heroes than I ever thought of being, and I just wish them luck, and I know they're going to do a tremendous job. They always have, and I hope things work out that we can put something in the museum for them to help be proud of, but I think they're probably going to exceed that.
Well, we're plugging for you, and I know there's a lot of people here in Mac and Yamhill County in this region that really want you to get that Medal of Honor, because it would be, I know, do you know Bob Maxwell?
Yes.
Yeah.
Bob's a great guy. I've known Bob for several years. Before we came here, we lived in Bend, Oregon, and we started an operation called Operation Eagle's Wings, where we tell veteran stories, much like yourself. And Bob's a great guy. He is also a Medal of Honor recipient.
Yeah, I know. I know him too.
And
I've been with him a couple of times.
yeah, he there was a grenade in France that was thrown into a bunker that he was staying in. He was also a radio man. You were a radio man, weren't you? In communications? Or
Yeah.
not? Yeah. So was Bob. And there was a German grenade that was thrown in, and he didn't know where it was, so he threw a blanket on it, and he laid on top of the blanket. The grenade went off, blew off part of his foot, and they thought he was dead, and they went off and left him, and they came back, and he was still moving around, and so they took him to the hospital, fixed him up. And but Bob, even though he lives in Bend, it's not a Medal of Honor that's attributed to Oregon because he didn't serve with an Oregon detachment, whereas yours would be an Oregon Medal of Honor.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope it works for that reason.
That's why we finally decided to go after it after all these years. You know, we've never attempted to get it upgraded all those time until we realized that the 41st, our Oregon National Guard, did not get one Medal of Honor for everything they went through in that war in the Pacific, and it was very tough fighting, and they were seriously shorted on medals, and so we want it for our Oregon National Guard.
Yeah, keep doing what you do, and I'm sure, I know people are supporting you, and there's a lot of people that are coming behind you, and by just the forward momentum, hopefully we'll make this thing happen.
Well, I'd like to say one more thing.
Sure.
I'm really tickled to be living in McMinnville. I like the town. I like the people. I think this is one of the greatest little towns anybody could live in.
Joanne, anything you want to add?
I really have nothing more to add, except I really hope that he does get this medal, because I think it would be a good thing for our state.
And not only that, but they're trying to put up a statue of him in this little town.
So what do you think about that, Leonard?
I think it'd be great for everybody. I like statues in the first place. I like the kid, Chad, who's going to put this thing together, make the statue, you know. They made one of Admiral Nimitz that looks great, even the wrinkles on his coat collar. And so I've noticed 2 or 3 other statues around town. I think it's good for a little town to have things that they can point to with pride, if you will, and say, hey, we're famous little town. Look at that. Come down to town and take a look at it.
I like the design of the statue where it's you throwing a helmet.
Yeah, me too.
And also, it's another thing for the next generation. Even the kids aren't born yet. They can come and they can say, "Mommy, Daddy, what's that statue about?" And they can hear the story.
Yeah.
And they can realize that freedom is something worth fighting for.
That's right.
And there's also something about heroes, that what is a hero, and I think it defines heroes for what, as a society, I think our character is defined by who we hold up as heroes. And is it a guy that makes 20 points in a basketball game, or is it a guy that single-handedly staves off the Japanese onslaught and saves his company?
When we first heard about the statue, we were very surprised, and we said, well, this has to be a symbol of our National Guard. And I'm hoping they put one of those QR codes in there that tells about, this is for our National Guard. I don't know exactly what their plans are, but I felt that kids today need better heroes than some of the celebrities that they idolize. And we were at a guest of honor at 162nd
You
holiday.
want to come a little closer to the microphone there?
We were guests of honor at the 162nd holiday party a year and a half ago or so. And Leonard had to give a speech, and waiting in line was a young soldier. Turned to me and he said, "He's a legend." And the look of admiration on his face, I just couldn't forget that. And that's one of the reasons why we decided to go for the medal.
You're a legend, Leonard.
So they say.
So they say. And they're gonna build a statue for you, and looking forward to the day we can unveil it. Hopefully you'll be there. Maybe you'll pose next to the statue, and they'll give you an army helmet, and you can throw it like the statue is. Well, thank you for serving your country. Thank you for stepping up when some other guys were running away, and you said there's people that are alive today and grandkids that are here today because you stepped up and said, I'm not going to let them take over.
Could be.
I think there is. Leonard, you're a hero in our book.
That's so I've heard.
They should put up a statue, and they should put a medal of honor on you, and then you'll be sharing it with everybody else. Thank you for honoring with your presence and your story, and looking forward to many years hearing your laugh and seeing your smile and the twinkle in your eye.
Thank you, Moody.
And hopefully there's some more adventures down the road for you yet to come.
I hope so, too.
There we go. Hopefully not jungle fighting.
Thank you.
Who knows?
Okay, that's a cup of coffee for today. If you have something you'd like us to talk about, a cup of coffee, send me an email, dave@KLYC.us. And again, we're going to post this story on OregonPulse.com here in just a bit. And also, we'll put it up on YouTube and our website, KLYC.us, and you can hear the story again. Very, very encouraging story, very amazing story about one man making a huge difference. So if you don't think one person can make a difference, listen to the story of Leonard DeWitt. This is KLYC AM 1260, Back and Mac, here to stay.